What's up, guys? Today we're in my apartment. We're not in my garage like we usually are. Today we're going to talk about some YouTube polls. If you guys haven't noticed, I've been posting these YouTube polls every week on a Monday usually. Just about European cars, German cars in general, random stuff like, which do you like more, an E46 M3 or a W202 or 203 C55, stuff like that. So I want to make this a monthly video. At the end of every month, I talk about the polls and what was the most picked, what was the least picked, what my take is, what my opinion is, and we can start a little discussion in the comments too. So my plan is to go through 5 polls every video. So every month we're going to go through 5 polls through the month. So I have the 5 listed right over there. The first one we talk about are M-Car Legends. You can see the rest over there as well. I should also mention that the polls are under the community tab on YouTube. If you guys haven't used them before, you can use them on phone or a computer, whatever you guys choose. And you're going to find them over there. You can see all the options and all the polls I've actually done in the past as well. So, the first poll, which of these M cars did you prefer? And I can't really decide between them, but let's see. So we got E36 M3 with the European S50 inline 6. The E46 M3 with, of course, the infamous S54, which we got globally. And then the E82 1M N54, the twin turbo inline 6 that I have my 335i. And of course the newer F87 M2. Now, not the competition, this is the N55 version, the earlier M2. So let's talk about each of these cars. So the E36 M3. You guys may know in the US we got the S52 version, which has less power. It's more of just an N52 that's with a cam and stuff. It's actually still a good engine. No one should knock that engine. It's still very reliable and good inline 6. More reliable than the S50, to be honest. I've heard of the S50 suffer from similar rod bearing issues that the S54s do. But I think this was because that the E30 M3 didn't sell very well in the United States, so they wanted to kind of cut some costs and make it more accessible, make the car a bit cheaper in the United States. All these cars sort of share a similar sort of idea and ethos behind them. So the E36 is still, I think, one of my favorite M3s. They're all great, but except the new one. The S50 and S52, whichever one you get, I think they're great cars. I've driven an S52 powered one, my buddy Don's, and I think it was an awesome experience. I love how small the A-pillars are, and I love the experience of cable-driven throttle bodies. It's awesome. Very raw feeling car, very light and nimble as well. The E46 M3 very much plays off of that. I think many people preferred that car for the longest time, and still think it is probably considered one of the favorite M cars, or maybe the best, or the most pure M car. Ooh, well, all that stuff, because the next M3 was a V8, and then following that it was a bigger twin turbo and all that stuff, and the purists like the E46 M3, that's for sure. I think it's a great car as well. I think it looks great, but between E46 and E36, it's hard for me to decide. Next up is the E82 1M. So while the M3 after the E46 went towards the V8 just for the E90 generation, which is also a fantastic car, BMW took the 1 Series chassis, the smallest car they made at the time, the smallest at least, 2-door, and they stuffed in the N54 from the 135 and 335. But they put the, you guys know this car already, I'm sure, but they put the E92 M3 subframes on it. They put the LSD from the M3, the control arms, all the stuff was basically carried over from the M3s. But the 1M is still considered sort of be the spiritual successor to the E46 M3, very similar size as well, as opposed to the much larger M3, which compared to the E46. And the successor to the 1M is, of course, the F87 M2, which also great car. I think it's just basically the same idea as the 1M, just based off the F chassis with a clearly newer engine, the N55. Now, people don't regard the N55 as highly as the N54 because it's not as capable of higher power. But to be honest, if you're comparing these cars stock for stock, I think the M2 looks better. I think the M2 is probably overall just a better car than the 1M. But the one thing I prefer over that the 1M has over the M2 is the hydraulic power steering over the electric power assist in the newer F chassis BMWs. And the highest polling here was the E46 M3. Unsurprisingly, like I said, is sort of the favorite amongst the enthusiasts. The 1M was a close behind it, probably because a lot of you guys are N54 followers, if you're subscribed to my channel. F87 M2 didn't do as well as I was expecting, probably because people would choose the comp over that. And of course, E36 M3, even the European version, which I listed here, didn't do very well, which I'm kind of surprised on. I also would like to put the E30 M3, because just for the sake of putting them all on there. Anyways, enough rambling. Moving on to the next one. Probably something you guys care more about if you're here for AMG stuff. Is my poll about asking which AMG from the 2000s to 2020s would you take? So I've listed sort of the cars in the C-Class Coupe territory. So we have the W29 CLK55, which used the naturally aspirated M113 V8, made 362 horsepower, a very reliable powertrain with the old 5-speed automatic slush box, like they call it. Then following the W209 CLK55, the next car in that sort of category became the W204 C63 because the E-Class Coupe came up and the C-Class Coupe came up at the same time and the CLK was axed, so kind of split in those two categories. And the W204 C63 was next, and that is the most popular by far. It's 61% of the votes, which I can't say is unexpected, considering I have a W204 C63 and a lot of the videos I make run that car. Next up was W205 at the second place with less than half the votes at 26%, also not very surprising. And then the W206 C63, which isn't out yet, but that's going to be a 650 horsepower four-cylinder hybrid. So they're basically taking the four-cylinder from the A45, the M139 single-turbo four-cylinder, and putting a basically electric motor on the rear axle to boost up that power from 400 to about 650, I think, is an overboost function. So not out yet. It'll be cool tech. It's going to be extremely heavy, heavier than my C63 with the V8. Look, it's going to be fast. It's going to be faster than my car. It's going to be faster than W204s or 205s, but you know, that could be a whole other video in itself talking about that car. But unsurprisingly, yeah, we see 61% of the votes for the W204 C63. I think you guys are sleeping on the W209 CLK55 and the W203 C55. Same idea basically there. One's a sedan, one's a coupe. Those cars are a lot of fun. You know, they're not the same horsepower numbers as the newer cars, but they're a lot of fun. People like Andersen, AMG, if you guys aren't following him, you guys should definitely, or subscribe to him, you should definitely check out his channel. He's documenting a whole manual swap on a W2124 M119 powered E420, basically a 400D or 500D's little brother. And he's already manual swapped his C55. That right there is a perfect combination. You got an NA V8, very simple, very reliable V8 paired to a 6-speed manual. That's definitely what you want. And I think those cars are going to go up in value once people realize how, I'm not going to say easy it is to swap them, but it's relatively straightforward. So that's definitely a car I want to own in the future. I want to definitely do a manual swap and put on the channel. But that's in the future. We'll see if I can do that sometime soon. Not soon, but next couple of years. But that's definitely in the back of my head all the time. Okay, next one. What would you do to your AMG M156 V8? So I have a few of these, obviously. M63, C63, and the SLS M159 is very similar. If you couldn't tell, I'm a big fan of this engine. I love it so much. My family's had M156s, since 2009. We've had a few of them. I think we've had 5 total cars with the M156. But none of them are modified mechanically. They're all pretty much stock. And I don't plan on changing that for a while at least, because I do enjoy the car. My deal is if I enjoy the car stock, I'm going to leave it stock. But if I don't enjoy it, I'm going to modify it. So the day I become bored with my C63 is the day I will modify it, and the day I put headers on it. But for now, I'm okay with it. So we have options here. Leave it stock because it's already perfect. That's what I put there. That's what I did. But obviously, you can make a lot more power with headers and stuff. But full bolt-on, so headers, tune, etc. So, we get like the air boxes and air filters, tune with headers, catalyst headers, and long tube headers. That was a majority at 45%, which I think is probably the best thing to do with these cars. From what I've seen all my friends who have these cars and know the exact same thing. The last option is supercharging it, which you could use this white stack unit, which is not great in my opinion. The SS or PTG units, or the Magnuson one, which you can't find anymore. Look, if you're going to supercharge these cars, I think ESS or PTG is the way to go. PTG makes this massive 4-liter supercharger unit, which is insane on these things, but that requires, sleeving the block and all that stuff. I think that's a cool idea to supercharge these cars, but then you end up with the whole, it becomes a pain to deal with, and especially if you live in California or Europe, dealing with emissions and TÜV and MOT. You're not going to pass those things anymore, especially in California. people get around it in California. You can do certain things, hypothetically. In my opinion, I love the NA power band of these cars, and I love how you can just, ring them out for power. They got torque down low, and I wouldn't supercharge one. Maybe the ML, if I came across a supercharger someday, I would supercharge it because that car could actually put the power down, I think, with its all-wheel drive. But now, mind you, I don't think that stuff can handle that much power, but just an idea. But yeah, the majority was 45% full bolt-on, and then the least amount was supercharging. So, it makes sense. It also costs a lot to supercharge it, by the way. It's like $10,000 just for parts. Probably that's on the low side, too. Okay, moving on to what is your favorite S-Class generation. So I'm a big S-Class guy. I love when you get S-Class. And not even AMGs, just any of the S-Classes, I'm a big fan of them. Super comfortable. My mom had a couple of them when I was growing up. We had a W221 S550 in diamond white metallic. Awesome car, awesome road trip car. That was a facelift Model 2, so that was nice. And then we also had one of the very first W222s, S550s in Southern California. We had one of the first ones. We leased that for like 5 years. And that was in palladium silver with the AMG line, both at AMG line. Fantastic car. I actually learned to drive on that car. I got my learner's permit when we had that car, and that was the car I drove most before I got my license. So that's a fun car. In my opinion, that's my favorite S-Class W222. So here we had pretty interesting results. The W140 is in third place at 20% of the votes. It's considered to be the peak S-Class build quality. I hear people say this all the time. I haven't experienced it myself. This is what I've heard. Everyone says, oh, the W140 is definitely peak S-Class build quality. In fact, price-wise, compared more to Bentleys and Rolls-Royces than it did to BMW. It's kind of a cool era of the luxury sedan because you had the W140, which was ultra luxurious, and then you have the E38 7 Series, which was more of like the driver's car but luxury sedan sort of thing. It was in the James Bond movie. I can't remember which one it was, but the 750 with the V12 was in it, and it was kind of a cool era of cars. Then you had the W220 S-Class that came after that. This is the second lowest number of votes, 7% only. You came from that W140 era of super high quality stuff, then the W220 was like a massive drop in quality. Now, I've had family who've had the W220 and I haven't noticed something noticeably like glaringly bad about the quality. I mean, yeah, it's definitely not ideal compared to the successors as well, but I thought it was fine. I don't have a massive, strong opinion on it. I do think it's not the prettiest car in the world. I don't think it's ugly though. In fact, I think the W140, I'm going to upset some people, but I'm not even a big fan of the W140 design to be honest, but I tolerate it because of what people say about it, but I don't know it for myself. Next up is the W221 at most of the votes at 45%. These cars are a great value right now, I think. They've depreciated like rocks, and yeah, they have the ABC suspension, which you're going to need to address and fix that if they have issues, which can be costly. But they just look so baller. They got those flared out side fenders, front and rear, wheel arches rather, and it just looks super aggressive, super imposing. And I really love that car, how it looks. It's very, very mafia boss looking car. So I can see why you guys like that car. Very beautiful interior too, especially compared to the 220. The W222 S-Class. So this is actually, it shares a lot of parts with the W221. Very similar, the chassis is based off the 221. Pretty much the whole car is an evolution of its predecessors. So especially the facelift 221 and early W222s are very similar in terms of how they look. Just one's a bit more modern than the other, which I think was a good idea because the 221 looks gorgeous. The only thing I don't like about the 222 was it kind of lost those bulged out fenders on the side, so it looks a little less imposing from the side, but still a great car. That car is super quiet. You can do high speeds. Even the 550s, they did 0 to 60 in like 4.7 seconds, something like that, which is just crazy for a car that large. Can't even imagine what the 63s are like. That's personally my favorite S-Class. Next up, we have the W223, this current S-Class. This one I'm not a big fan, I'm not gonna lie. The exterior is growing to me for sure. I've gotten used to those horizontal taillights. I've gotten used to the larger grille at the front end. Not too bad, especially compared to the new 7 Series. The interior is just a massive screen now, and it's lost some of the elements of what make an S-Class cool inside. You've lost all of those like wood features and the nice flowing lines and stuff like that. Now it's just one massive screen that's going to be outdated in about a couple of years. So it's definitely lost its touch for me, and in my opinion, the quality's gone down a little bit. I actually stepped inside a couple of new S-Classes recently at the dealership. A lot of creaky panels, a lot of the doors used to stay in place, and now they don't anymore. I mean, in terms of like closing the door, it would stop anywhere you want it to. Now it doesn't do it anymore. The switchgear just feels a bit chintzy and cheap compared to the 222 and 221. It's a bit of a letdown for me, but I'm sure they're gonna, they're great cars, so they're very comfortable, but not my favorite. And of course, my camera decides to overheat and not record the last bit. Anyways, it's all good. We're back now. You might have noticed the light has changed because the sun is about to start setting. Anyways, we're in the 5 Series now. So we have the E28, E34, E39, E16, F10. You can see on the screen right over there. E28 got the least, which I'm surprised about. Usually people love the older cars. You see all the rage of the E30s and stuff. My buddy Aiden has the E20. You've probably seen it on TikTok at some point. That car's pretty famous now. E34, they're there. I think they're really good looking cars. Nice selection of power plants as well, but that didn't do very well at 6%. E39 did much better than I was expecting at 49%. Now, I did not think E39 would be a majority at all. I was expecting E60 or E34, E28 to have the majority, but no, that wasn't the case. And that makes me happy because I have E39, of course. E60 was 19%, F10 was 25%. So honestly surprised that F10 had more than E60. I thought E60 would have gained some traction because of the M5 and the 535, both being very popular. Of course, that E60 was the generation of the V10 M5 with the S85 V10. Very questionable reliably, but it's a really well respected engine in that regard for the enthusiast point of view. F10 was the last 5 Series to come with a manual, so the F10 M5 had a manual transmission for the first couple model years. It was an option at least. Very rare, but they do exist. A lot of people don't believe that, but it is true. E60, really funny about the manual on this car was that it was available in the US, but not in Europe for whatever reason. Still don't quite understand that, but you know, it's interesting. Anyways guys, that basically wraps up this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this little different style of content. I know it's not my normal style of content, but while I'm not at home with my cars, it's kind of a good thing for me to make. I think these polls are kind of interesting to see, and we can talk about it as well, which is pretty cool. Expect a video coming soon on my 5 Series, and why I think it's a great car, underrated in general, the 530 specifically. Also a video on refreshing the ZF320 transmission, new detents, and new seals and all that good stuff. And also a video on MHD Plus with the 385i. The MHD Plus came out like 2 days ago, yesterday maybe, so we're making a video with that and see how it is with the Dynamic AutoWorks turbos. And also a C63 interior cosmetics video as well. So stay tuned for those, and see you guys soon. Should be video at least next week, and then of course the following weeks after that on Saturdays. Alright guys, see you in the next one, and subscribe for more content like this.